Welcome to the A to Z Running Podcast, where we help runners thrive. I'm Andy.
And I am Zach, and up next, an examination of some of the most valuable non-performance benefits of running. And after that, World of Running updates about the National Championships, NCAA cross country, and a sad record story, and more. Welcome back. Glad to be talking into your ears once more. And in case you have not yet done so, make sure you submit your thoughts and questions to atozrunning.com/question. Why? Because the end of month Q&A episode is coming soon. Remember that we grab several of your questions every month and then feature them at the end of the month episode so that we can speak directly to your situation and your context. And that's the best thing that we do on the show. And so we want to get your questions. Then you need to submit them ASAP.
It's great when we can get feedback from you. I think the questions are helpful because we can speak directly to what you're wondering about. But also when you let us know when things resonate or help you put a framework on things, such as Zach's term that he came up with a couple weeks ago, the goal urgency trap.
Those are my words. No one has ever used them before.
Well, maybe not in that order. And we have defined it as rushing progression or neglecting immediate needs because of an earnest fixation on a future goal. That was an episode that quite a few of you reached out about, and I'm glad to know that you also experience some of these things because I certainly do. And I think we can help one another process these things. And if we put kind of a term on it, I think then it helps us become more aware of when it's happening to us.
I also find it very difficult to discuss things without words. So I use words when I discuss concepts.
Instead of chirping or barking, those things wouldn't be quite
gestures,
as well
most
for
of
their
you listen
human
instead of
audience.
watch. You know, if you watched instead of listened, you'd actually get an enhanced experience because
sure.
we also do occasionally add gestures, like the one I'm making right now. And you don't know what it is unless you're watching. So you missed something.
You're so silly. Ellie said that she really felt this term, not Zach's hand gesture. And Rob and Samantha also said that it was a great topic. And getting that feedback from you is helpful. I know, like, I'm not pleading for affirmation on things, but just to know that it's working for you, like hearing these kinds of topics discussed is helpful. I'm really glad to know that. And then it can help us moving forward.
It helps, too, because Andy doesn't always believe me when I say that everything we say on the show is valuable and helpful to everyone who listens. And so in order for her to believe me, then your comments help with that too.
Everyone's doing an eye roll right now. Speaking of rolling, I have an
good
item.
Transition. Look at that. Check it out.
On which that you do roll. It is the orb made by Pro Tech Athletics. Now they make a lot of products, but this is still my favorite. They've come out with some pretty great stuff. But this is the thing that I use on the regular, especially because even though Zach says maybe my head is a little big, I think this is going to be this. I think this is going to be smaller than most human heads. Yeah, it's about the size of what? What would you say? Like a grapefruit? Yeah, I'd say a grapefruit. And you can stick it in your bag, and it's a lot more portable than a foam roller, and it does the same thing and more. For instance, a couple of the things that the orb does that you can't really do with a foam roller is use it against a wall. You can also get to some of those harder to reach places, for instance, like your adductors up high or maybe your high hamstring. So this is a great tool, and I like I said, I use it regularly, and I really do love this product. This is the Orb Extreme. They also have the Orb Activate, which it also vibrates to get some more circulation and breaking up some of that fascia as well. So that's just another level of this tool. We have that as well, and they have bands, all kinds of different tools. But you can check them out, Pro Tech Athletics. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because you can get a discount, and that is ATOZ20 for 20% off. Again, that's ATOZ20, A to Z 20 for 20% off. If you like to combine festive experiences with running, you might want to check out the Whoville 5K in Michigan. And it's on December 11th in the afternoon, and there's also a kids race. There's a 5K and a kids race.
There's that, and proceeds go to the Rapid Runners, which is part of the Down Syndrome Association of West Michigan, and a recent development that they're growing there, which is really cool. Testimonial from one of their participants.
Who's actually a friend of mine.
Who happens to be a friend of ours.
Yeah.
And she said this being the first time in her life that she's motivated to be active, which is really cool.
Yep.
So because proceeds go there, and because it's festive and fun, and because of all the other good reasons, and you can get $5 off your registration, you should definitely sign up.
Yeah.
You can get $5 off registration with code AtoZ5. That's ATOZ5, the number 5. And that'll get you $5 off at their run sign up page.
Now let's get on to our main topic.
So chances are you're listening to this before Thanksgiving or shortly after, in which case what I'm about to say is entirely irrelevant. But anyway, in the event that you are a USA-related person at the moment and going to be celebrating Thanksgiving, chances are someone's going to say to you in the next several days, what are you thankful for? And rather than come up with some kind of snarky response or roll your eyes at them, we're going to give you several things that you can say in response to that question because you are thankful for why running is beneficial even beyond the performance stuff and achieving your goals. Because in fact, there are many great benefits that benefit anyone who does this activity. And so we're going to share some of those here and give you fuel for your conversations in your family and friend circles you'll be frequenting.
I'm going to poke at Zach because gratitude is always relevant. So no matter what you're doing,
it's
where
especially
you are,
relevant,
when
though,
you're listening,
when people are often asking you what you're thankful for.
Gratitude is a great attitude, of course.
Oh,
so let's get started with it. Running is great for your bones.
Yes.
And there's a lot
Tell
of
me
reasons.
more.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of reasons our bones grow weak, aging, which no one can avoid. Even with luck, you can't avoid aging.
I am not yet aging.
Oh, no.
I don't do that yet.
Everyone is aging, even the youngest of us all.
Well,
We're
okay,
aging
so
daily.
There's two things, right? There's two things. You're either maturing into your full physical potential, meaning you're young and not yet beyond your full physical potential, or you're decomposing.
Thank you.
Slowly. Well, I mean, it's basically you're in one of those two phases, right?
Well, I can tell you, actually, we're going to get it. I'll just bring it up now. Up to the age of 25, our bones significantly grow in density, and we're able to adapt to our weight-bearing exercise quite a bit up into the age of 25.
Ish, because it's not always exactly the same for every
For
person.
adult runners, it's more like a couple percent that we can grow in density, but we're also preserving the bone mass we already have, which is super important.
So if you're older than 25,
And we're fighting entropy. So I feel like both things are very valuable when it comes to bone density. Because go ahead.
That's exactly it. Because then in that sense, you're having the same benefit regardless of whether you have been running for 40 years or you've just started, a week ago. And that benefit simply is you're adding resilience to your musculoskeletal system, which is very important for two reasons. One, because if you want to keep running, you need the resilience so that you don't break. And two, it's essential to be able to maintain a kind of general healthiness about life too. And so these things are valuable. Now, where the question always comes up, because you see tons and tons of conflicting, people do this stuff all the time, where it's running is actually really, really bad for you. And I'm always fascinated by the argument running is the unhealthiest thing you can do, which is just silly. But what one of the cases that's made sometimes with that argument is that runners tend to break down and get injured and things like that and such. And so where the question is how beneficial is running for things like adding resilience to your bone density and such, the answer of course is insofar as you're maintaining a healthy balance with it, not breaking down too much and burying yourself in fatigue and eventually potential injuries. And so what it comes down to is then in order to train in such a way that you're reinforcing this concept, you have to remember that there are ways that you could train that are not healthy with it is breaking you down. And there are ways that you can train that aren't necessarily contributing to that. And so here's the simple example. Your bone density responds better to smaller, sustained, consistent bouts of stress as opposed to a major stress every once in a while. So then as a consequence, it's the regularity and consistency that's going to help you most.
Right, because again, bones are living tissues that are undergoing adaptations.
Look at you.
So we're responding to it. And if we don't give ourselves the right increments, of course, if we put a large stress, like if we don't train for a marathon and then do a marathon, that is a big stress that our body has not prepared for or had the opportunity to grow the proper adaptations. So just remembering our bone is a living tissue, and to show gratitude for them by giving it the weight-bearing exercise that it needs in order to grow denser. And it's a huge benefit. It's stronger that way. Remember to practice good nutrition. As a runner, when you are doing, it's a high impact sport. So I think that makes it even more, well, it is more important because you're going to need the adequate calcium and vitamin D to make these adaptations. Otherwise, you are going to get stress fractures. So that recipe, if you don't have proper nutrition and you're doing a ton of running, then you are more likely to break down because you're not able to grow bone density instead you're tearing down.
Yeah, so your body stores calcium in two places, and one is kind of within the muscles, and then, of course, naturally, the majority of your calcium is in your bones. And when the body runs out of available calcium in other places, it starts grabbing it from your bones, which is why then stress injuries become so prevalent for runners, is because if you have any shortage of calcium, or if you're doing something that's stressing your system beyond your calcium supplies, and it's going to, and if it draws a little bit from your bones, that's not a major risk. It's when it's happening constantly or when it's happening in large amounts at a time. So, yeah, the nutrition piece is exceptionally important there too. One of the curious things that I'm always fascinated about is how medical professionals, so often when someone is diagnosed with something like osteopenia, not quite osteoporosis yet, but potentially progressing toward it, one of the things they often recommend is running or something similar to. So not everyone should just go out and start running who has a risk of bone degeneration, but that's one of the common recommendations. Why is that? Well, for these exact reasons. Because if it's a gentle stress that's consistent over time, not some crazy major stress, then that gentle stress to your bones, to your skeletal system, can help reinforce.
Another thing that running is great for is your heart. And that doesn't come as a surprise to you because people often call running cardio.
Well, in fact, it is that.
Yeah, so it helps your cardiovascular system, and your heart is a muscle, and you can strengthen it. And of course, that reduces the heart's workload if it's stronger. You have a lower heart rate, so it's not working as hard. You have a lower resting pulse and more efficient in your oxygen intake.
Yes, and so one of the most fascinating pieces of all of this is when your heart gets stronger, what is actually increasing in terms of like the adaptation. And so the concept is stroke volume. How much blood can your heart pump with each beat is the most important metric for a strengthening cardiovascular system. And that's exactly what's happening. There's two limiting factors, and this is what I always find so fascinating about this. Two limiting factors. One is the place the blood can go, all right? So think about like the fire hose, right? If you can throw a ton of water through a fire hose, but you only have a teeny tiny fire hose, you're really not going to move that much water. But you have a lot of water you could throw. Then the other side of it is then the actual strength of the heart, its capacity to move blood better. And so you have both of those layers, right? And I'm being entirely unscientific about explaining the physiology, but the point is as you're running, you're growing both of those things, and certain kinds of training stimulus can do more and less to the different sides of that as well. And so one example that is always fascinating is an undertrained runner most always is lacking in terms of like cardiovascularly, lacking the place for the blood to go concept. They don't have enough capillary beds in muscles, the little teeny tiny veins that you can grow more of in quantity by training. Those things are fewer, and so there's just not as many places for the blood to go to help bring blood to your muscles, oxygenate. And so, as it were, there's an important question there about, okay, so in terms of training, what kinds of things do I do that help address both of them? Great. We're glad you asked. The first is for growing volume of like things like capillary beds and transport. Then for that, it's things like the long, easy running. High quantities, high volumes of easier effort running is the stuff that's going to help achieve that goal best, most effectively and efficiently, as it were. So that's good to know because that's not very hard to do. Unless, with time constraints, then of course you have to figure out how much you can handle in your life balance. But the point is, that's good. And then the other side is harder effort, higher intensity bouts and such are then also going to be valuable. But the adaptations are more limited in terms of how much you can grow your potential with that. So You grow more potential stroke volume with the easier stuff than with the high intensity stuff. But by doing both, which is what any good training regimen is going to do, it's going to have both, then you're increasing your heart health.
Mm-hmm. Running also helps prevent blood clots, promotes better blood flow, and it reduces your cholesterol. Well, the bad kind, and then the good kind it helps promote. And running on a regular basis, research tells us, can reduce heart disease by 35 to 55%. That's a lot.
Why? Well, okay, this is an important question. Why does, for one, a stronger heart.
Yeah.
One of the main reasons why people are experiencing heart-related problems is because their heart is degenerating. It's either weakening, it's something in the system itself.
And the blood flow,
right.
like we were talking about.
So as a consequence, just like with the bones, you're reducing the amount at which your heart degenerates through your life by cardiovascular activity, aka running in this instance. Mm-hmm. I like it. Now, Andy, you're going to say this in a minute, but I'm going to ask about it right now because it's relevant. So with the blood flow piece of things and like reducing the potential for blood clots and such, why are blood clots potentially reduced by running and training?
I don't know.
I'm not sure either. That one's curious, but I think it's related. This is why I'm asking. I think it's related.
I'm sure we have a lot of cardiovascular experts who can share with us. We're going to get back to you on that.
This is more like a cursory survey, as it were, anyway. But my question is one of wondering. I'm not going to make a claim here, but because one of the things you're doing by regular, consistent cardiovascular training is you're moving more blood through your body in more frequency, right? And so the higher rate of blood flow, you're recycling your blood through all of its filtration systems.
Yeah.
So your blood's circulating through your liver and it's circulating through your lungs with the oxygen and carbon dioxide. So all of the filtration systems are circulating more regularly. And without a doubt, that's going to help with all of these other health-related things because your blood is the thing. It's the key to transporting nutrients where they need to be. It's the key to transporting oxygen where it needs to be. And it's the key to moving the bad stuff out of where it is to where it can be dealt with.
This is not a Mythbusters episode, but I am going to bust the myth that my great-grandpa used to say, which was you only have a certain amount of heartbeats. Stop wasting them on running.
Yeah, he in fact did used to say that.
You might, in fact, get more heartbeats if you run.
But it wouldn't matter, right? This is the best part about that argument, Andy, is even if he's right, we're still right too, because we just said what you're doing by training your heart is you're increasing stroke volume. So even if you have the same number of beats, every beat does more for a runner than it does for a non-runner.
So carpe diem.
Snap.
Live life to the fullest. Running also reduces stress. So running reduces the stress hormones of adrenaline and cortisol. Aerobic exercises like running use up excess adrenaline in the bloodstream, helping to reduce the production of cortisol and help improve recovery after stressful events, which many of us experience those on a regular basis. This can help improve your ability to cope with stress in general over time. Problems that happen due to stress are things like heart disease, as we mentioned earlier. And also there's trouble sleeping, depression. Those are things that also will happen if you have high levels of adrenaline and cortisol in your bloodstream. And what we were just saying, like it uses up the excess adrenaline. It's actually using it so that it's not just in your body. So it helps you cope with that stress over time. Other things that also could be related: headaches, digestive issues, ulcers. So yeah, I mean, I can't say that it would be solely reduced by, this factor of stress alone, but of course they're associative. So you would assume that they would be beneficial overall for those issues.
Now, this, I'm going to make a semi-controversial statement.
Okay. Oh.
Yeah. Because chances are you're listening to us while you're running right now, because we know many of you do that. However, in reference to, we were reading recently the book Flow, and so we were discussing that on a recent episode. And one of the comments here by the author is that our focus and attention and concentration are conditionable things. And one of the key differences between someone who conditions those things and someone who does not is the way our attention wanders. Okay, so here's where I'm going with this. Yeah, you know where I'm going now. I think.
I do.
Okay, so
I thought you were going to do this in another episode.
I might, but
Okay.
but I'm plugging it right now.
All right.
So yeah, we want to expand this idea a little bit more because this is really important. Teaching ourselves to control, or rather conditioning our thinking and directing our attention deliberately, it is one of the means of helping reduce stress. Okay, but part of the reason why is because, according to the author, Csikszentmihalyi, he says that they find that our tendency when we're just kind of like letting our minds go is to think about negative stuff. And matter of fact, to focus on chaos, the things that are going wrong, the problems, and all of this. And we kind of all know that, right? Now, what he then says is, in order to avoid that, most of us, not terribly consciously, but just kind of instinctually, look for distractions. And we're trying to distract ourselves to get away from that chaos thinking. Which brings us to then one of the virtues of running is its ability to provide opportunity for us to direct our thinking and be deliberate with the way we're concentrating on our attention. However, at the same time, as runners, we often tend to want to use running to enjoy some of our distractions we don't always have as much time for in life, like listening to your favorite running podcast, the only running podcast you need to hear, and like things like if you're on the treadmill, watch a show, right? Or if you're, or like me, I read books on the treadmill. So
does Liz, by the way.
Yes, I was going to say,
many
of you.
That's a good way to pass the time
yes,
on the treadmill.
Yes.
I said, yes, he does that too.
Yep, she has said that. And many others of you have mentioned that to us at various points. So anyway, the point being here, if you're looking to try to reduce stress levels, and so if you're feeling especially stressed, a distraction while you're running reduces the value of the run
for a stress
to
relief.
alleviate stress. So this is a really fascinating and difficult thing.
Sure.
Because one of the other layers here is that for many of us, by having the distraction as a kind of carrot to entice us to want to do the run, it helps reduce that barrier of motivation of going out for the run to begin with, right? Now, in order to reduce that barrier of motivation, you need the carrot. However, the carrot itself is causing a greater, or rather a lesser value on the stress impact, which is the thing that's causing your problem to begin with. So this is not a simple task, not a simple concept to try to address in the way we're doing it here, but the point remains that examine what you need right now and then try to use it to help achieve that in an effective way. So if you need stress relief, chances are going for the run while watching a show on the treadmill is in fact not going to have much of an impact on that stress.
But if you enjoy
have some,
yeah,
but not as much.
And that's why variety matters, right? So we have mentioned this as a recommendation to have some runs where you allow yourself distraction, like a show or maybe a podcast, for instance, or an audiobook, and on and on. Well, but then some that you intentionally leave to be solo in both your mind and alleviate those distractions. So we have both within our schedule. But if you are really, really stressed, maybe you're at one of those points in your life where things are really tough. It might be better to not numb yourself with distraction and instead go and process it on a run.
But in doing so, being deliberate about our thinking too, because if it just means you're just going to run and dwell on, the really unpleasant things going on, that may in fact not be good either. So
I guess
it's right.
It's very personal.
But what it comes back to with these kinds of things is that it's of course not absolute. And a good example is that just recently I was talking with one of our runners and specifically recommended that the runner find something interesting to do while running on the treadmill because motivation was lower and it was harder to get out the door for the run. It's getting darker this time of year in Michigan at least. And so
if you have a show that will get you on the treadmill and actually doing it, that's
we talked about Star Wars and it's like, there's a lot of Star Wars content to catch up on. So that's a good, right? But the point here is extrinsic rewards are always potentially valuable for a short-term gain. If you're looking for something short-term, extrinsic rewards are almost always debilitating long-term. They remove your capacity to internalize the value of something over time. So if you're going to try to use those external rewards to get yourself motivated to go out the door, do not make it the norm. That is a bad long-term solution.
But, with consistency over time, if during the winter it's very hard for you, then go ahead and distract yourself some. If it allows for you consistency during the winter, but then also realize that you're going to have to return to focus. And again, I recommend that you don't always distract yourself. So maybe you do like 2 days a week, you have distraction, 3 days a week, you don't. So anyway, that's my 2 cents about it. Because I think you should enjoy it. And if it's it's beneficial for you in so many different ways, and if it has a little bit lesser of a value for your processing and your stress relief, then,
Everyone's waiting if Zach's going to push back or digress. Well, I'm going to digress this time.
All right.
Because Andy's not going to let me push back further. All right. There's one more. There's one more and only one more benefit to running. Oh, no, wait. That's not true.
That's not true.
There's one more we're going to share now.
We could have so many more benefits, and We've actually talked about so many benefits on the show. But we're talking about physical benefits here today. Running supports a healthy immune system. And this is really interesting to me because there's so much conversation around, should I run when I'm sick? Should I not?
Well, it depends on a lot of things.
There are so many factors. Yeah. But when I read this, it kind of gave a little bit more clarity to me for some of the more non-aggressive, mild sicknesses that one may encounter. So exercise pushes bacteria and pathogens out of your airway.
Who would have guessed?
But I think that you think, but I think that we just think that it just is like a continuous thing, but it actually helps purge it, I guess.
I guess if you're in a room where they're coming in as fast as they're going out, then that's probably a concern. But
interesting. Antibodies and white blood cells circulate more quickly, of course, so they can detect and attack illnesses sooner.
Goes back to the blood moving around the body.
Right. So even if you don't know that you have encountered a germ or a bacteria, your body is going to be able to detect and start working on fighting it more quickly because you're a runner.
There are 2 things that stand out to me right away with this kind of thing. And this is not at all, I'm speaking to a generalization, not at all what happens in every specific situation. But the first is so people often talk about things like holiday, I get sicker on the breaks, right? So if I'm a teacher in school, I'm healthy all semester, and then I get sick on the Christmas break. It's a thing people are constantly saying. Why does that happen? And then for runners, I'm healthy during my training cycle, and I get sick in the taper. Why is it that I always get sick as soon as I start tapering, or right after the big race, and now I'm taking a break and then I'm sick? All that kind of stuff. That's obviously not this thing that happens every single time, and most people are getting sick regardless of when those things are happening at some point. But the point is that your likelihood of illness increases the less activity you're doing. And this may, in fact, be related directly to the blood circulation factor, but there's some other things going on there too, including things like the stress relief that running provides helps even with something like physical illness. So it is an interesting reflection. We are not making any direct claims about what solution you should make right here insofar as not knowing exactly what is happening internally to help increase that. Yeah. But
there's something very real called the letdown effect that occurs when your body produces an immune response after a stressful event has subsided. Yeah. So that is, and this is something that happens around the holidays for a lot of people too. And it's just because you're going so hard and you're tired. I mean, we know that fatigue often is one of the reasons that we get sick. So our body's ability to fight, our energy is low. So those are some of those reasons too.
And what it all comes back to is everyone should run. Who can. Or, at least everyone should do cardiovascular activity who can.
Who do and who are part of this community together, being grateful for the things that running can bring us beyond our performance. And that's so important because as we look at running, it can be hard when we're in a cycle where we have a big goal to not see all of these other benefits. And I think when we do, I think we have a greater appreciation that can help grow us in consistency over time because we have all of these various benefits, even when the performance doesn't go our way.
2 things that will counteract all of these running benefits that you need to avoid. First is overtraining to the point of problem will counteract all of this stuff. It will cause you lots more problems than it will help. So looking for the right balance is key. The other is inconsistency to the point of not sustaining a regular training stimulus is also going to negate many of these benefits. So what we have to look for as runners is find the balance that my life allows me to sustain, find my routine and structure, maintain my consistency, and I will be able to experience such benefits more so.
And if you're not able to run, a lot of these benefits also included walking as helpful for this, the benefits that I mentioned, and jump rope. So if you're stuck inside and you don't have a treadmill, jump rope can be beneficial for you.
My college cross-country and track coach once claimed, I believe it is true because I believe all of his claims, but I believe it is true that he, one winter when needing to get in training runs and it was like blizzarding him into his house kind of thing, ran in place for like an hour.
Wow.
Just right there in the middle of the living room.
Why not?
And that, once again, is just innovative ways to achieve the training stimulus to some degree. I love it. That's so good. There you go. So now you have all the solutions, or rather all the value, and some solutions to help achieve that value. And you have fuel for every time someone says, what are you thankful for? And you can say, I'm thankful that running helps my immune system because it might be worse if I didn't. And that's
Spark
nice.
some interesting conversations.
In fact, it could. But don't do the immune system one if you're talking to someone who's really sciencey, because we didn't give you much of the science behind that. And I don't know that you do your own homework and then you'll be well equipped. You'll handle it just fine.
Well, now on to the world of running.
Well, in the world of running this week, we've got some really exciting things. We love cross-country season because, well, I do. I love cross-country. But it's difficult to talk about cross-country in the same way that we talk about the road running that's going on because it's not something that's just generally understood and experienced. You know, most of us don't run cross-country outside of when we were on a team that one time way back when or something. So, as it were, we don't spend as much time on it. But we have to when the season wraps up and national championships are afoot because it's just so exciting.
It's
All
a
right.
foot.
Yeah, okay.
Bad running joke.
So this reported by Let's Run, the NCAA Cross Country National Championships happened. It was held at Oklahoma State University this year, which is the same course they used for the last one. So you kind of get a comparison, which is always interesting when you can kind of see how did the last people do. This year, apparently, it was,
Less windy.
Yeah, it had to have been conditions-wise better because it was so much faster.
It was
But
a lot faster.
also, the talent was just simply doing things that they weren't the last time of the race, which, so a testament to them for some really strong racing, and nice to have some conditions that yielded a little bit faster times too, which is always fun.
Yeah.
All right, on the men's side, I want to talk to you a little bit about some just craziness going on here.
Craziness. Upsets.
First, one of the most interesting things to me was national champion Charles Hicks from Stanford won the individual title. And why this is interesting is because Stanford has produced some serious running talent in the last 15 years. I mean, forever, but the ones that names you'll recognize in the last 15 years. Talent like Ryan Hall, which is a name that most runners still know. Grant Fisher, who's breaking every record under the sun.
Yeah, Grant Fisher.
Yep. So really exciting stuff. And those guys, those guys are great. Neither of those guys ever won a national title in cross country, though, and among many others who have run at Stanford. And here Charles Hicks pulled this off. And everyone's like, okay, Charles Hicks, is he going to be like better still than some of these other guys? Which, of course, you can't do that. You cannot do that because just because someone won one race doesn't mean they're going to be better across a career than, that's crazy thinking, which we'll come back to actually in a moment. But that was really exciting. So Charles Hicks pulled off a massive victory for Stanford. Part of the reason we feel that he was especially motivated to turn out such a great race was that his team was the favorite to win the national title. Stanford was the favorite coming into the race. By a lot.
Yeah.
They were dominating this season, and it was clear that they had a team that could produce a win. So Charles Hicks had the motivation up front. Like, he had to do everything he could do for his team, right? And the best thing you can do to help your team is win the race. So he did it. I love it. He got the job done. Tried to put the team on his back, ran a course record. He ran 43 seconds faster than the previous national champ on the same course, which was Connor Mance. Once again, use legendary names here. So that was really an exciting win. But
drama ensues. It continues.
Is it drama? I mean, it continues, yeah. So what gets crazy to me is then what's going on the team side of things for the men's cross country, because there's always going to be these kind of waves and eras. This is how the sport works. I mean, this is how all sports tend to work. The Chicago Bulls were winning every basketball game under the sun in the 90s, and then the Lakers were winning everything, and then the Cavs were winning, so it's like that's just kind of how things go, right? Well, right now, it is the day of Northern Arizona University for for men's cross country.
Yes, it is.
It is their day, and they have proven it in ways that make no sense in the sport.
Well, it didn't come off easily or very clearly because Northern Arizona tied with Oklahoma State, scoring 83 points. Each of them scored 83 points.
Flat tie. First
Flat
time
tie.
ever in NCAA cross-country history that there was a tie for first place.
Yeah.
So that's never happened.
This was so weird, you guys, because I had to reread it. I always thought that it was the 6th place runner who would be the tiebreaker.
Well, it certainly is in other races.
It is
just not
most
in
of
this
the
one.
time, but not in this one.
Yeah, so what they do is they take, for the tiebreaker, they take your top 5 runners from both teams, and then they take out all the other runners in the race, and they just score you head-to-head. So whoever had the best head-to-head score then is the one who wins the tiebreaker, which I
Isn't that
just
bizarre?
find fascinating.
Yeah.
But of
I think
course,
it's weird that they do it differently than everybody else.
who won the tiebreaker? Northern Arizona University, largely because of 2 things. The first is the 1-2 punch of Nico Young and I always forget his name. Drew, thank you, Bosley. So Bosley and Young went 2nd and 3rd overall in the race. Only Charles Hicks of Stanford beat these 2.
Mm-hmm.
And this is reminiscent of back in 2017 when NAU won the race, because their top 2 guys then led the race out and just like controlled it, right? And everyone's like, what are these guys doing? Because this was kind of before NAU was like the powerhouse. Everyone's like, what are these guys doing? Tyler Day, and I remember the other guy's name. And it's like, wow, they're running really good. And then it turns out Justin Knight storms through and wins the race, but they still finish super high up. So now you have the same story here, and that's just an incredible run by both Bosley and Young. Great stuff. And then they've got the kid who finishes 4th on their team, who like passes 50 people in the last K. And it wasn't 50, but it was something like that. He just runs the race of his life, which, by the way, I got to remember his name. Brody Hasty, I think is his name. And so he was one of those that like won all the high school stuff, and everyone was like, this guy is going to be the next legend. And for some reason has not quite like arrived at the very, very top in the NCAA. But he is always a threatening factor in like every single race. And so to see him be kind of the clutch person for the team, that's something. So as it goes then, NAU wins the race. Here's what it is, folks. NAU just won their 6th national title, and that makes them tied for 4th total across all of NCAA for the most national titles in cross country. But get this, they won their first national title in 2016. This is their 6th national title in 7 races.
Yeah.
They are literally the only team winning in NCAA cross country right now. They've won 6 of the last 7 and 2nd in the one they didn't win. So it's like, what is going on? Well, I can tell you what's going on. Mike Smith is the head coach at NAU. That's when they hired him. This guy knows something. Yeah. And he also happens to be Galen Rupp's coach for the last year after Salazar left. And not left, but all that stuff happened. So anyway, Mike Smith knows what he's doing at NAU, because they just turned off what should not have been their win. They were not the team to beat in this race. And yet, somehow, when it came time for the most important race of the season, they got it done.
Mm-hmm. Stanford ended up in 4th place, so they really struggled.
They did.
To their number 1 ranking. But on a higher note, Zach said, that he loved cross country. He's like, at least I do. Well, I love cross country too, as a spectator
Not as
and
a runner.
Fan of the sport.
Yeah.
I have deep admiration for those who run cross country.
All right.
I just physically haven't pulled it off, and maybe it's my hips. So maybe I'll be able to enter into an era of cross country racing coming up. Who knows?
You could be like
Who knows?
Shailene. Shailene, you're a Ferrari, not a 4-wheeler off-roader.
I think that's really, really generous to call me that.
Okay, you're a Lamborghini.
Maybe I'm the new Prius with all-wheel drive.
Oh, come on.
I'm very efficient. Okay, so the women's side did not lack any amount of drama.
Even
either.
more excitement, I think. That's what's so good about it.
The race was between 2 incredible women, Caitlin Toohey and Parker Valby.
Parker Valby of Florida, Caitlin Toohey of NC State.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
You're correct. And it was just an incredible race. Well, Parker Valby, she's a sophomore. She took it out, guns a-blazing. She ended up running. I don't know when she took it off from. I think it was like only a K into the race.
Yeah.
She was out there in front. Yep. She ended up like gapping quite a bit. And
at one point, her lead was 12 seconds.
12 seconds. That's significant.
Which is big in a 6K race. This is not a very long race either. So,
And Caitlin Toohey hunted her down.
They should call her the Huntress.
The Huntress.
That's cool.
I think, who was it, Sidious Meg, that like posted something like there's nothing scarier or could place more fear in a runner's heart than being chased down by Caitlin Toohey.
Oh man.
She's got quite the kick. And she demonstrated that in her cross country victory.
She did it.
Caitlin Toohey won, and it was in the last K that she ended up passing Parker Valby. She set a new course record of 19:27. That's over 29-second record that was held by Mercy. I didn't write it down. Mercy Chelangat. That's right.
Who, by the way, was the previous winner, but also in this race and was one of the potential favorites. Just didn't have quite the day this time.
Yeah.
She just didn't have a great day.
And it was her senior year, right?
This is her last.
This
This is her
year,
last cross country. Yep.
I loved that Let's Run said that Caitlin measured her effort perfectly.
Ah, look at you.
Yes, measured her effort perfectly.
How do they know that?
And I'm going to get that. I'm going to get to it in just a second.
Okay.
Yes, because there's actually an explanation for that. The women's team win, though, we have to mention it's a team sport, cross country is, North Carolina State. So Caitlin Toohey's school, she led them to victory.
And not she by herself either.
Not she by herself.
Teammate Kelsey Schmiel, like in third place?
Third place.
Oh, my goodness.
Third place.
What a run.
They had the best finishes in their program history. So incredible performances by their team. And the NC coach discussed the difficult part of the course with them, with her team, and advised them to measure their effort during that section and to make sure that they didn't go too hard so they would have enough effort in the completion of their race to be able to have a strong run. And I love that she said that because she thought that was the key to her team's winning success.
We got to get that lady on the podcast.
I know.
I've heard some interviews with her, and I just would love to be able to like talk with her and ask her these questions directly.
And I should have written it down because it was super interesting. Yeah, I didn't write it down. I think it was like their fourth or fifth runner ended up passing like 50 people in the last little bit. So again, the measuring of effort to be able to have a strong close can be a major key to success when you're running championship races.
Yeah, and that mattered immensely in that race because they didn't win by so many points that without someone doing something like that in the late stages, they wouldn't have pulled off that victory.
It's very exciting. In
fact, it was Alabama who was winning at maybe like halfway by quite a bit. So it was the late stage of the race that really did it.
Mm-hmm. This is just a really interesting side note. It has nothing to do with what we've been talking about, but the interviewers for Let's Run were asking Valby if she's going to go for sub 15
on the track.
Yeah. And Valby was like, my goal is to do my best. She like laughed and she's like, my goal is to do my best. I don't know.
Oh, come on. Give them something. Give them something. Caitlin Toohey answered
that.
too.
I think that committing publicly can put a lot of pressure on a young athlete. Yeah. And I think it was smart for her because it's unnecessary stress to declare like.
Oh, but it's so much fun.
Yeah. Speaking of which, though, that goal, right, that we just mentioned, the sub 15, Caitlin Toohey is running in Boston in 2 weeks, and she's going to go for. Well, they asked Valby about it, and she said she wasn't sure yet.
Okay.
So it's possible that we're going to see another matchup of these two going for the collegiate record. I don't know if it's on a track, though. Is it indoor?
Yeah, yep,
it
is.
An
indoor
track.
So
it would be.
That's the first indoor track.
Jenny Simpson's record is just over 15 minutes.
15:01.
So we'll see. That will be
exciting.
Be something. If both of them went under, that would be incredible.
I mean, so let's remember too that these women are both like 19, 20 years old. They're young, and they're like some of the best in the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy to me.
Oh, I love that you added this about Natalie Cook.
Yeah, so let me share this because I've been following Natalie. We've been talking about Natalie Cook a little bit here and there. This is her true freshman year with OSU, and so there's even conversation at one point about like, is she just going to redshirt and not compete her freshman year because that sometimes is what they do. She's the top recruit last year out of high school, just like crushing everything. She broke the high school 5K record right during her senior year there. So everything looks like, Natalie Cook is just, in a great place. But true freshmen rarely do well their first season of collegiate running.
Well, think about it. Everything changes.
Everything changes. Life, your training, your coach, your team, everything's different, right?
Yeah.
It's very hard to be able to ride that groove into a successful well. So First, she finished 7th overall as
That's
a
incredible.
true freshman, which, by the way, the best finish of a true freshman who's American is 4th ever. And that was Katie Rainsberger in Oregon, who, once again, was another like superstar recruit. So Natalie Cook, the second best finish ever by a true freshman American, which is incredible, but also just like strong through the season. So now people are like saying all the stuff, which you shouldn't do, but they're doing it anyway, which is like, she's the next thing. So now we've got the likes of Caitlin Toohey, Parker Valby, Natalie Cook, who are all young and amazing runners. And everyone's sitting here thinking prospects are great for the future of American female distance running.
Yeah. A lot of the message boards and interviews were kind of picking on Valby because she wasn't running the tangents. They think that she lost the race because of the tangents. And she's like, pretty much she said, I'm going to just sum it up if I may. Like, she is just not experienced. She's like, I'm 20 years old. She's like, I didn't even really see it. She's like, I'm just following the cart. I don't.
Well, I mean, when you're leading the race like that, you got to follow the cart so you know where to go, right?
Yeah, yeah. And people can pick on that stuff. But honestly, like, she's undergoing a lot of stress, right? And so for her to just be able to turn off that part of her brain and just follow the cart is probably, what she did. But tangents can be important in your race too. If you think about your next marathons, especially, guys, there's a lot of running that happens in a marathon. So make sure you're not swinging wide on all those big city streets.
Yeah, I mean, most of you who use like a GPS of some kind that's fairly accurate, or better yet, like a foot pod, after you finish the marathon, it usually shows things like 26.5, 26.4.
That's normal.
Do the math on that, and you're talking about like 2 or 3 minutes more running that you did than the full distance. If it was an exact 26.2, which there never are. They're always a little bit long. But point being that it can have an impact the longer the race. I don't think it makes that much of a difference in this scenario. I think if you're talking about like 6K, 10K, 5K stuff, yeah, I don't know. The point is, Caitlin Toohey had her number from the beginning and knew what she needed to do to beat her. And I'm not sure that any slight difference in the execution would have made much.
She ran like a veteran.
True
ran like the pro that she will be soon.
So lots of excitement. I did want to mention, too, because in the women's race, there was just so much incredibleness happening. Alabama, OSU, and UNC all 3rd, 4th, 5th in the team rankings, in the team finish. Those are the best finishes by programs in their history. And so you've got new team names in the top 5 that you've just not really seen ever before. And so that's just really cool too, because now it's, things are kind of shuffling up a bit, and it's always fun to see how that. But NC State is like riding the top right now. Yeah. So that's a team to watch.
So our next bit of news is not quite as fun, unfortunately, but we do want to share it because it's kind of big news.
I mean, not everything we say is positive news, unfortunately.
Yeah. World record voided. And that was Camille Herron's world record 100-mile run was voided after a remeasure of the course. It was remeasured in February and October of this year, where it was determined that the course was short by 716 feet.
I have to say, short by 700 feet. And it's a 100-mile race. Yeah. Isn't there like a margin of error here that's tolerable?
So the reason is because they did modify the course after it was ratified. Wow. So it was no longer ratified, and they could not ratify the new course because it did not meet the criteria.
Yeah.
No, they said ratify. Well, ratify the record.
Ratify is the record.
Yeah, ratify the record. So the USATF Track and Field Committee decided not to ratify the record. However, that was not the result found by all, because on February 27th, about a week after the race director hired Paul Fritz, a World Athletics Level B measurer, to measure the course, and Fritz came up with 100 miles, 0.00396. And that was the shortest course possible. That was the shortest course possible. And Camille expressed that the stress of this world record being voided and not knowing the results of it, because, it was remeasured right after the race when they said that it wasn't going to be the correct distance. So she's been going through this for a very long time, since last year. And she said that it has impacted her races this year, the stress of it. We can't imagine what Camille is going through However, she does still hold the record because it was her own record that she broke in 2017 is where this record now stands in 12 hours, 42 minutes, and 40 seconds. But the reason she's so upset, she explains, is that she may never get this chance again, and she may have been in the best shape of her life. She believes it was 100 miles, and her effort will not be in history as it deserves to be.
Yeah, I mean, so these things do happen, and what it comes down to is it's unfortunate, but it's not something that, so to her point, like it's really bent her out of shape, and that's just very frustrating and a difficult thing to have to deal with. But unfortunately, these things happen actually a fair bit. Race directors make errors from now and again, or in this case, it wasn't an error. It was just an adjustment that they had to make, and, the consequence was bummer. Yeah.
Now, this next one is more of like this is good advice. And
good
so
advice
I thought we'd
from
add
Outside
it in.
Magazine.
We like Outside Magazine. There's quite a few good articles that we find from there.
Sometimes we like Outside Magazine. We like some of their running articles.
5 run-improving exercises you can do during daily life, which we have actually mentioned a few things before here and there. I think I have an article somewhere on our website with recommendations too, but I thought these were good. So one of the things that you can do as you're standing around, single leg standing. So you're doing dishes, single leg standing. So you're putting on your pants. Don't sit down. Single leg stand. Try to put your pants on.
People sit down when they put on pants?
Yeah, I think so. I used to before I could do single leg standing.
I find it really hard to sit down when I'm putting.
Okay.
I can't reach my feet very well.
This conversation doesn't need to happen.
Okay.
Air. Squats while doing tasks.
Yeah, okay. I gotta say, this is supposed to be daily life, and if you're in the office doing squats, that might not be the most socially acceptable.
Maybe you're doing dishes and you're going down and putting it in, coming up. Maybe you don't do it in the office. Single leg standing, you probably could do in the office.
I kind of want to do this in my next conference meeting, though.
When single leg standing?
No, squats.
Squats.
Just to see what people. Might rip your pants though. Let's avoid that.
This conversation should be about the things that
I am talking about the things.
Okay.
Okay.
Hip flexor stretch at your desk. So you move your chair back. You do a hip flexor stretch.
Is that the one on your knee?
Yes, on your knee.
That hip flexor stretch.
Yep. Short foot and toe yoga while sitting. So flexing your arch while keeping your toes relaxed is the short foot. And then toe yoga, there's different kinds of that. And then also posture focus. And I've done this, and I think it's actually super helpful for things like sciatica when you're on long distance drives or in a plane. And that is when you contract your stomach to reduce the curve of your spine. So you're kind of like tilting back. I'm doing it right now. So
you tilt your pelvis forward.
Right. Yep.
Is the concept.
Yep. So you're contracting your abs, and then the curve of your back it becomes more straight instead of curved.
Yeah.
So that's something that you can do, and that will alleviate some of your back pain, as well as you're going to be activating and strengthening your abs. So those are some good run improving exercises
to look awkward in the office. I mean, to improve.
I don't care about looking awkward. That's something I've given up on. I
beg to differ because if you're out on the stage presenting for Toyota, chances are you're not going to be doing these things.
Not while I'm presenting.
Exactly, because it would be awkward. All right. Now, thinking of things that are, in fact, helpful to you and don't have to stress you out about awkwardness, we've got our training plan builder up and ready to go. So all it takes is like 2 or 3 minutes. I'm guesstimating
of your time.
Of your 2 or 3 minutes of your time to submit the form, and then we will be able to get a training plan customized for you within 2 days back to you. Mm-hmm. It's pretty quick. Mm-hmm. It's pretty easy. Too. And it's very, affordable, accessible. So certainly we always encourage people to explore, what kinds of supports and options are going to meet the need for you. And not everybody needs or wants necessarily a full coaching experience, but you'd like some training customized for your season that you're in right now. We've got that option too. So check it out. Go to AtoZrunning.com/coaching. It's on that same page. Find it under training plan.
And in the spirit of gratitude and Thanksgiving, I want to express our gratitude for all of you.
Why? Look at you go.
And I don't say that in like a cliche way, although it does sound cliche. I really truly mean it. I feel like I found a lot of good friends via this podcast, and we've met a lot of cool people. We've had some really excellent experts in the industry of running, and medical industry too, able to help us help you thrive. And we've loved connecting with each and every one of you who has reached out. Again, another way you can do that. It's not too late to connect with us. It's never too late to connect with us. So make sure you reach out. You can say hello, or if you have a question for our podcast, that is also a way to connect with us further.
At AtoZrunning.com/question.
Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you next week.